Is this Anderson?
Yes, it is. What's going on, Robert?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good.
I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear. So, are you? So you're enrolled in school, but you're also working full time as well, or did you finish up last semester?
No, so I'm a second year right now, and I'm just on my first co-op term. So it's just like a work term for 4 months. So right now I'm like full time working, but and then like in the summer I'm gonna go back to school.
Okay. And what's your major, Anderson?
Right now it's legal studies in Artis.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, this story has been pretty crazy, and you got to live it first person. As I said earlier, thank you so much for posting this and kind of letting the world see just exactly what happened and kind of giving your breakdown and your thoughts on it as well. The reason I want to connect, I'm potentially working on a follow-up story just on a couple different loose ends, and I wouldn't mind just kind of getting some context from you just in terms of how things kind of played out afterwards, and maybe just now that you're a little over a month removed, just kind of your general thoughts on the situation and how it's really kind of blowing up now. But I guess the first question is really just so you get word that the final classes are canceled. You have an opt-out possibility for the final assignments. What was like the general reaction from the class in terms of the other students maybe that you were talking to? Like, what were the emotions like kind of during that period?
So I'm just going to speak from my perspective, obviously, because I can't really speak for others. I'm not sure how other people reacted. I do know like a lot of different people had a lot of different reactions, but mine was basically like after like they told us that there was like 3 different options. We either finish up the first assignment and do assignment number 2 as the finale, or he gave us the option to also not do the final assignment and actually make up an assignment and work with the professor to see how he'd grade that, and kind of like make your own assignment and then he'd grade it on that. Or there was the third option of just leaving it as your grade was. So we had certain people, like obviously some people who didn't do as well would be like, yeah, like I'll do a final assignment to try to like boost their marks up. But people who were happy with their marks, they were like content to stay where they were, so they didn't really like push to do the final project.
What options did you end up choosing?
I ended up so everybody had to do like a group project. This was assigned at the beginning of the year, so we had our groups for, I'd say, like since the second half of the semester started, like coming back from reading week, we had like we were put into groups. So I finished up that group assignment and I just left my grade as is.
Okay. In terms of the reaction to your video, when you kind of posted it, what were your expectations? What did you think was going to happen? And I guess were you a little bit surprised at all in terms of, I guess first just viewership and how many people kind of flocked to it, and then second, the university's reaction asking you to take it down?
I'm gonna be honest. Like I knew everything that was gonna transpire. I knew for a fact that the university would not have the happiest of reactions to seeing that. But I also realized that it was an opportunity to kind of tell a story. When it came to the reaction of viewership, I like stuff like this you see all the time. So I kind of had an idea that viewership wise it would do well. But the reactions of the video were mixed. There were a lot of different opinions. Some people are on the side of the professor, some people are on the side of the student. And yeah, there were students that came up to me and said like, oh, like thanks for doing this. But I also got a lot of backlash saying that it was disrespectful on my part to be telling something that happened in a lecture. So I really got like mixed ends on both.
Just looking through your YouTube page, I know that you do kind of talk about your experience at Waterloo, and this is something that's kind of relatively new in the last 5 years, is this idea of people kind of becoming their own journalists, telling their own stories, putting things up for themselves. After kind of going through this and kind of having a little bit of backlash, I suppose, from the university, and also getting a little bit of backlash from people that viewed it, does it change your perspective in terms of doing this, or does this make you think like, oh, this is interesting, like I'm going to keep doing this?
Absolutely not. I've always believed that if I'm going to do something, I should do it regardless of how other people feel about what I'm doing. I don't feel like other people's opinions should be swaying whether I do something I want to do or not. But I like I said, I did receive a lot of backlash, even from students not in the class. Everybody within the class was great. We all supported each other because we knew, especially, it was a hard time for the student to endure what happened. So us within that speech and communications class, we were all very supportive of each other. But there, like I said, there were students that were like, they were kind of hateful on the video. But yeah, I kind of don't really let that, kind of faze me, because I'm a student at the end of the day. And my main goal at University of Waterloo is to just educate myself.
You mentioned in your reaction, this idea of not necessarily being afraid to go to class again, but certainly feeling like, okay, I have to be on my toes in case, I think the word you said, he comes at me. In terms of your university experience, I guess I know that you're still relatively new, but had you ever seen anything like this, ever felt anything, remotely close to this type of altercation?
No, not even close. But like I said, at the beginning I did say like I really enjoyed his class, and in fact at the beginning his class is like it was the most engaging lecture I had out of all 5 of my other classes. Like I had, I believe, 2 or 3 legal studies classes, and those were more like the professor would just teach and there wasn't really time for engagement because they were just teaching about like law and stuff, and then we would just have to either jot notes and write exams. But this class, it was the speech and communication, so the entire purpose of the class was to engage with the professor. So yeah, I enjoyed the class up until this happened. And like you said, and I said this before, like after that I was just like, I was on alert. I just had to stay dialed in to make sure that not like, they didn't come at me or anybody else. But yeah.
Right. Now, in terms of the actual scenario, so you have someone coming into the class that isn't part of it. How common is it in your experience? Has it been that like you're in a class and there's students that aren't necessarily there, but they're just kind of sitting with friends? I mean, most of the times I guess you wouldn't even know because you're not necessarily talking. But is that common at Waterloo?
See, the thing about that is, like, when I first read your article, I didn't even know that the student wasn't from the that class. Like, I was always under the impression that he was. I don't personally know the student. I also don't know the name. But I remember when it happened, I just automatically assumed that it was like he was a student within our class. I never knew that he wasn't not in our class.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good to know. In terms of like the actual interaction itself, what was the starting point of it? Was it literally just a put your book down and then it kind of escalated, or do you remember how it kind of first started?
I honestly don't. I mentioned this in my video. Like, I had an AirPod in, I was like half listening to music, jotting down what he was saying. So he usually he likes to talk, and then when he says that, okay, I want you to remember this for either an assignment or a write-up you got coming up or something along those lines, usually you just like take the notes as he goes. So while he's talking, you kind of just write down the important things. And I had an AirPod in while he was doing this, so I was just typing away, and then it kind of like, when I was typing, I look up, and then all of a sudden I just see kind of a yelling match between the student and the professor.
Right. And how long exactly was this kind of full process?
I'd say the interaction between the student and the professor were like 2 to 3 minutes. And yeah, don't quote me on that because it's like looking back at it, it's really fuzzy.
Right. Well, I guess last question on the actual incident is, what was the energy like kind of in the room afterwards?
It was just kind of all the students, like you could feel the shock in the room. We were like you just felt silence just because we were all so shocked that it actually happened. Like we weren't sure if this was an exercise or what was going on at the beginning. A lot of students, because the lecture he was teaching, it was kind of about I don't know how to explain it. I gotta look back in my notes, but it had something to do with like a certain type of communication. So it kind of fell in line with what happened. So we were actually unsure if it was like something to do, like an example that he was trying to show with this interaction. So we were just all very confused and we couldn't believe what happened. So you just felt the energy just sucked out of the room after the altercation.
Right. Now, in terms of the actual handling of it by, the professor and by the university, you mentioned kind of having all of these different options. Obviously, you had the town hall type of meeting, that next class. Did they handle it as well as they possibly could have in your perspective?
So I mentioned this before. In my perspective, I was just trying to like move on from the situation and just finish up. That was towards the end of the semester. So I was just trying to like put it in the back of my mind. I had 4 other classes that had heavy final assignments and final exams. So I don't think I was caught up, especially since I wasn't the one that this happened to. I was just trying to like move on from it. I'd say they handled it pretty well. The professor apologized and to us students for what he did. I'm not sure about the interaction between him and the actual student that it happened to, but I'd say they handled it pretty well.
Right. Okay. Well, look, man, I think that really is, all the questions that I have. My favorite point at the end is always just, anything you didn't get to mention that you think would be important for me to know.
No, that's pretty much it. You got it. Yeah, like I said, I read your first article. You pretty much nailed it head on. I was curious though, how come it like this incident happened like a month ago? So how come this article just came out recently? Was it like something you were working on, or like how did this come about?
It's a combination of both. There's a reality that I have to kind of make sure that everything happened.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's also elements of the university was on break for a lot of this, so actually getting giving them proper amount of time to comment and everything else. So sometimes it's a process, and also I wasn't necessarily alerted to it for a number of weeks afterwards.
That makes sense.
But yes, so that kind of explains, I guess, why it came out about a month after the actual incident.
Yeah, because I remember when I only knew about the article when I hopped back on my YouTube and I saw that like there was about 2,000 people who just clicked on the video from an external link, and that's how I found the article, because you had linked it in the article. So I was like, oh, this is how, like, this is what's happening, like this is why it's gaining traction again. So yeah.
Well, and I think it's one of these interesting things where, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's been one of the most read stories in the country the last 3 days, and it's interesting because it kind of touches at different age demographics differently, and you can see the reaction based off of where it's being shared. So, if you go to Reddit, it's mostly all students, and pretty much unanimously they're on the side of you and the other students. But then you go to Facebook, and our post, it has something like 1,000 comments now, and it's mostly it's boomers. It's an older generation. And it's the complete opposite. It's, these kids need to toughen up. They need to get ready for the real world. And it's really interesting that this one situation where it's like, you have a professor that I think candidly, had a bit of a meltdown, did something that you can't do, and there's this obvious response, which is you can't do it, but there's different layers to it, and I think the reaction to it is just so interesting, and I'm sure you probably felt the same way when you first put the video up.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just it's kind, you kind of see both sides, right? With the older generation saying that we do have to toughen up as kids, and the younger generation saying that the professor shouldn't have handled it that way. Like, it kind of shows you both sides of the sword. Like, you kind of see reason behind both sides.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anyways, it was like I said at the beginning, thank you so much for putting this out there. I wouldn't have been able to write this story without that. So it's I very much appreciate it, and you taking the time tonight as well. So if I have any follow-up questions or anything like that, is a text, is that the easiest way to get to?
Yeah, just shoot me a text. If you have any more follow-up questions, you could always just give me a call if you want to ask me anything else. But I just want to ask you, like, how about if you're gonna do a follow-up article, I was gonna do a follow-up video like a month later about the entire situation. So would it be okay if any of this was put out? I just don't want to say something, quote you, and then have you not wanting me to tell it before you post your story and post the side. So if you're gonna do a follow-up.
So my follow-up will likely be coming out in the next couple of days.
Okay.
That'll be out there. You can absolutely reference it in your videos.
Okay.
And if you want to mention that I reached out, absolutely. That's completely up to you. I can send you actually a link as well once this next article goes live.
Yeah, I was gonna do this whenever. Just shoot me a text when you're about to publish it. I was gonna do it referring to this exact phone call itself. So just if that's okay with you.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So just let me know when this is coming out, and I should have a video to associate with, and I'll send you the link for the new video too.
Okay, perfect. All right, I really appreciate you taking the time, Anderson.
Always, Robert. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
No problem. All right, bye now.
Bye.